Of all of you sitting here, how many remember seeing me on TV? See? Nobody. Only Jay.
There are several, ma'am.
It's okay. It's okay because I do belong to the past and nobody recognizes me anymore. And some of the influencers we work with are
Boy dog.
Makoy Dubs, Mighty Magulang. See?
They
They know them.
Yes. Very relevant.
Why do we mention those names? Because they connect to people like you. And who are people like you? You do not belong to the past. You are the young ones. You are the ones who can make a difference. You are the ones who can bring us to the next station. We can't walk there anymore because we're tired. Imagine coming up to the third floor.
I'm so sorry about that, ma'am.
No, okay lang, exercise. You know what we found out in the many years that we were on the air and now that we're really not on the air on regular TV? The stories keep on repeating themselves.
Hi, I'm JC. Welcome to Cup of Jose, your local Escolarian podcast, where discussions have a purpose. In the past couple of weeks, we have been blessed by the presence of so many talented Filipino broadcasters, multi-awarded. Today is extra special because we welcome someone who has decades of professional experience in the broadcast journalism in the Philippines. The OG media rockstar in the Philippines, Miss Cecilia Aldaba Lim Lazaro, popularly known as Cheche Lazaro.
Cheche Lazaro Productions Inc. The atmosphere then was there were newscasts, regular newscasts, a lot of talk shows. The big idea behind Probe was to introduce the documentary form, the long form of news. We wanted to explore both sides of the issue. Tonight, we welcome you to the initial telecast of Probe.
Hi, Miss Cheche.
So CEU has a special place in my heart. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Ma'am Cheche.
All
Now,
right.
Ma'am, I'd like to dig deeper on the
Yeah.
current social issues that we have. Like very recently, the PSA, Philippine Statistics Authority, released a statistics telling us that there is 17 million high school students who are functionally illiterate. And prior to that, we also had the PISA ranking, where we're on bottom 4 of critical thinking. So now I'd like to know your stance about this, ma'am. Who or what do you think is the culprit of this educational crisis?
I think I'm a firm believer that education is a great equalizer. By this I mean you take two individuals, two children, one goes to school and the other one does not go to school for circumstances beyond their control. The first person has a higher probability of succeeding in life because she has the skills that somebody who has not gone to school does not have. You have language skills, you have mathematical skills, you have critical thinking skills, you have the ability to navigate for yourself. While the person who has not been schooled, although there are many exceptions of people who are street smart without going to school, are already disadvantaged from day one. They cannot read, they cannot write. To have this statistic where we are not literally functional is really, for me, the saddest news that we can have about education. Because if the Filipino child is educated, we have seen in our work in Probe how great and good the Filipino is. And I mean that most sincerely. In our 30-year work of being on the air, I have seen personally so many examples of the excellence of the Filipino in everything they do. So when they say, hindi magaling ang Filipino, that is not true. The Filipino is good, and if you give him the opportunity to shine, the opportunity for an education, the opportunity to have a decent job, the opportunity to make choices of his own, he will excel. We were the first show that did stories on the overseas Filipino workers. We went to Italy to do stories there. It sounds glamorous, But the Filipino worker abroad works to the bone. It's not easy. They have a difficult life. And all of them, when you speak to them confidentially, of course, on camera, they will tell you, ay, masaya dito. You will see them posing in front of a Lamborghini with their new clothes. Off cam, they will tell you, if they had a choice, if they had an opportunity, they would not go abroad. They would rather be here in our country. I mean, what tastes better than sinigang in your own house? Sinigang tastes wonderful there, and I love eating sinigang abroad because it reminds me of home. But it's not the same sinigang as the sinigang here. So, for them, they go abroad out of necessity. And we did sad stories, some happy stories, but mostly sad because they all expressed a desire to return to the country if there was an opportunity for a good job, to earn enough money to be able to stay. I don't think they all want to buy a Lamborghini. I think they all just want to be with their families. The social costs of Filipinos going abroad is very high. Broken families, number one. Broken all over. I remember one time we were in Greece and we interviewed a gentleman who was very successful with balikbayan boxes. And the lady that we were talking to was also Filipina, and we were sitting beside each other while the camera was setting up. And she told me, I said, so what is your relationship to this guy? And she said, he's my boyfriend. We're going to get married. But earlier, I had interviewed the guy whose wife worked in London as a chambermaid in a hotel. Their children went to very expensive schools here in Manila. The wife was working in London, he was working in Greece, and he was going to marry this girl. Yes, you have a nice school and the opportunity was there, but it was a broken family. I mean, when we did those stories, we would really almost cry knowing that this is what happens to them. On other occasions, when we do, of course, the objective of Probe was to do stories about Filipinos in the Philippines and around the world. Now, we were not doing stories on foreigners. We were not doing stories on fabulous houses. We were not doing stories on designer clothes collections. We were doing stories on Filipinos. We went to a squatter area where somebody had organized orchestra, an orchestra made out of scrap material,
Very noble.
made out of lata. Can you imagine? They organized an orchestra made of scrap material. It makes you feel proud. It makes us feel very proud because it's done by people who have no access. They have never seen a real violin, but they made music using scrap material. And they're Filipino. That's the best part. They're Filipino, and we're proud of them because they are Filipino. That's the number one consideration.
These are really perennial issues that have underlying causes that are very difficult to answer.
Okay, teka, bago ka mag-palpitate, nag-e-enjoy ka ba? If you are, at gusto mo pa makapanood ng mas maraming kwentuhang inspiring, relatable, at proudly Escolarian, tutok lang sa Cup of Jose. So, kung ready ka na ma-inspire, don't forget to click the like, share, and subscribe. Ituloy natin ang mga kwento ng tagumpay. Kasama ka rito.
Now, Probe right now is working on several projects. How is Probe trying to contribute to addressing the educational crisis that we have?
We have a project. Probe was on the air for 25 years. So we have a library of about, please correct me if I'm wrong, how many tapes?
18,000.
We have 18,000 tapes. Where?
If you're
Oh,
back.
here they are.
Michelle.
Okay. Andito na pala siya. Okay. That's an old monitor. These are some of our tapes. Anyway, we have a collection of that, and we have preserved it, and we are now digitizing it for access to anybody who wants it. Of course, there are fees, right? Because this does not come free, but they are a record of Philippine history because this has its beginnings in EDSA, prior to EDSA, all the way to today, all the way to yesterday, or all the way to today. And these materials are really a historical record of what has happened to our country. Uh, what we are doing now is we are transitioning from the people that used to watch me. I could take a survey now and find out of all of you sitting here, how many remember seeing me on TV? See, nobody, only Jay.
There are several. There are several.
Or maybe 10. Okay, maybe
Yeah.
10, right? And it's okay. It's okay because I do belong to the past and nobody recognizes me anymore. I remember the time when people would say, I know you, ano ka? And then they, blurt out names that are not my name. Now, what we have done is as a project of Probe, they have now transitioned to working with influencers. Di ba? Influencers are such a big
Yes.
name to you. Influencers who are helping us do the project about fact checking. Checking your facts, finding out, is this real or not real? And some of the influencers we work with are
Makoy Dab.
Makoy Dubs, Mighty Magulang, see? They know them.
Yes. Very relevant still.
Very relevant. Okay, why do we mention those names? Because they connect to people like you. And who are people like you? You do not belong to the past. You belong to the present. You are the young ones. You are the ones who can make a difference. You are the ones who can bring us to the next station. Kumbaga, we're waiting at the train station. Pick us up and bring us there. Right? We can't walk there anymore because we're tired na. Imagine coming up here, third floor.
I'm so sorry about that, ma'am.
No, okay lang, exercise, di ba? But anyway, that's what we're doing. And right now, they tell me that our audience has become much younger. Because our audience then, the ones who are watching me, are now Lola, Lolo, Lola at Lolo pa rin. The younger age are your age. You're the ones. You're the ones we're targeting. You know, we have you in your bullseye and then, bing! Let's get them.
Right.
Thank you very much, ma'am. That's really, really wonderful addition, no? And right now, there is a lot that has changed in terms of the media landscape. You were mentioning earlier about those changes. Now, I'd like to know from your standpoint, and I'd like to beg to differ, no, that you still remain to be relevant to us audience. Because your work has been there, and now it's going to be immortalized. Through your work.
Immortalized.
Yes. Now, I'd like to ask, from your stance, how do you think should institutions like CEU adapt to these changing media landscapes? Like in terms of curriculum development, how should we be adapting?
You know what we found out in the many years that we were on the air, and now that we're really not on the air on regular TV? The stories keep on repeating themselves. It's just different names, different circumstances, but the stories repeat themselves. Poverty, climate, politics, dynasties, ambition, power plays, the overseas OFW phenomenon. All of these stories we've done 20, 30 years ago. But if you move it to fast forward, you can do the same story today. You can do the same story today. In the elections, cheating, corruption, they're still the same. Uh, maybe improved, more sophisticated, but basically the same. Getting the people's money for their own personal use, that was done 10 years ago. That was done 20 years ago. So you ask yourself the question, why haven't we solved it? Why has it remained the same? Is it because we refuse to change, we refuse to see it? There have been some systems that there have been some successes, yes, and we try to highlight that. But why do they remain the same? That's the question. Has our educational system been able to address that particular concern? What values are we teaching our students? Are we engendering the value of making money as opposed to service? For example, when you ask, what are the most popular courses? And they name them, nursing, medtech, whatever the list is. And you ask, bakit? Why do you want it? Ay para maka-abroad, para mataas ang sweldo. Is there a push to be interested in science, in engineering? What kind of a workforce are we building? Are we building a service industry workforce? Are we building a medical workforce? For example, countries like Singapore are building a scientific workforce. They're in the sciences, they're in engineering. We have a very strong arts and talent here. And I guess the educational system has to look into prioritizing what kind of citizens we want to develop and what kind of value system do we want to engender. Honesty, for example, trustworthiness, these are characteristics that used to describe Filipinos. Oh, Filipinos are honest, they're very hardworking, they're very masipag. These are some of the nice words that are used for us. And hopefully, our educational system will move in that direction. But I think what is most important is the value system. What values are important to us? Because today, you hear stories of corruption, and you wonder, did these people who are corrupt, did they go to school, and was honesty taught to them? You wonder, di ba?
Yes, ma'am. And also, I think one of the greatest contributions of Probe is the creation of a generation of critical thinkers. That's based on one of the interviews that you did in the past.
Yeah?
And I remember this episode that you created. It's called Bahay na Pula. Aired in March of 2001 at
Yeah.
GMA 7.
Yeah.
And this is about the many challenges that the Filipino women encountered during the time of the Japanese. Now, and we know that you are very positive about Philippines and how Filipinos are worth fighting for, as one of our leaders said. Now, do you think that Philippines is still worth fighting for?
I have a very biased answer. Because I'm Filipino, the answer is yes. I was born in the States. My parents were there during the war, and I was born there. So I had an option to be an American. But I renounced it and I chose to be a Filipino. And I'm proud of it. Sometimes you wonder, with all of the stories going around, when is the Philippines going to progress? I don't know. Maybe the genes of my grandparents kicked in or something got into my head. Am I still proud to be Filipino? Yes. I've seen good examples. In doing Probe, I've seen examples that I can be proud of for being Filipino. I've also seen examples of things that I can be ashamed of. But every country has that. Of course, when I have an opportunity to travel, and I see how other countries have progressed far beyond where we have gone, I feel sorry for our country. I do. I honestly do. But I never wish I were some other country. It's okay. I'm fine. I'm blessed because I have a Filipino citizenship. My parents, my grandparents, all opted to be Filipino. And I respect that decision.
You're changing my perspectives about the Philippines for the
Yeah,
better, of course,
really?
for the better. And I think
Okay,
that
good.
your impact really is very evident in that part. Now, in one of your interviews with Miss Lucy Cruz Valdez, she visited us also, by the way.
Yes.
You mentioned about the repeated patterns about the news and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Now, from your perspective, do you think that corruption is something that can still be treated in this country? And how does media play a role in addressing that?
You know, I think change can always happen. I mean, it has happened in several countries. We didn't think EDSA would happen, right? What we lack as Filipinos is sustained pressure. Hindi nga scuba tayo, di ba? Parang, o sige, gawin natin yan. And then when the fire is burning, we walk away. Magsisiesta muna tayo. Pagbalik natin, wala nang fire. Because we're not consistent. Hindi tayo pupursige na, sige, ipagpatuloy mo yan. For me, the hope is you, and I'm not, hindi ko kayo binobola, you, the young people. If the young people, you and education. If we educate the young with the correct values, if they're given opportunities to finish their studies, to find jobs, and to be economically stable. Not rich. Let's not ambition to be rich. I mean, yeah, it's nice to be rich, but let's ambition just to be, so you eat, you live, you have a roof over your head, and you have what you need in life. Not a Lamborghini, not designer shirts or clothes, because they don't last. But the values that you have in your heart last forever. Nobody can take that away from you. If you have a youth that is empowered, that has enough of a living wage to be able to survive, has the knowledge garnered from education, from proper education, has a value system that can be harnessed for the good and love of this country, there is hope. When you talk about love for country, it's not just, I love the country, I'm going to work Filipiniano tonight. That's one of it, yes. But love of country is valuing what happens to our fellow Filipinos. Doing good para sa ating mga kababayan. And it's not being in government. We know that being in government, you can do good if you don't get too greedy, too ambitious, and too corrupt. Not too corrupt. Corrupt, period. But there are pins of light. Vico Soto, Lenny Robredo, Doc Eddie Dorota. There's so many of them. But they're tiny lights. Tiny lights. Like pebbles, if you have enough lights, you can illuminate a room. Right now, you have lots of strong lights. These are senators and congressmen who are trying to outdo themselves in shining and in blinding us so that we can't see the detail. But if you have enough tiny lights, you know what happens in a dark sky. When the tiny lights come on, you see what's in front of you. My hope is the young people. I don't know how many years it will take, but the more important thing is if you put the right people in government and you have a government that makes it his objective to get everybody a living wage. The poor in our country are just so poor, they cannot even think of who to vote for because they don't know what they're going to eat. tonight. And it's really impossible. It's too demanding to ask that the poor, boto nyo to ha, kasi walang bahid yan, etc., etc. It's too much to ask them that because they're worried. Ano bang papakain ko ngayong gabi? Hopefully, mauubos din. I don't know, maybe I'm too optimistic. Maybe I'm too unrealistic. But you have to be hopeful. When you have a dream, you have to reach for something further than your reach. Otherwise, just keep your hands to yourself. And that's what I want every Filipino to do.
All right. Critical thinking, structural change, and values formation. These are underlying themes of our discussion this morning or this afternoon, ma'am. Do you still remember Victor?
Yeah, of course.
Victor is one of those character or people from your documentaries, and he's a reflection of the many hurdles of Filipinos. Victor might be watching together with his child or his wife right now, and other women. By the way, Miss Cheche started Probe at the age of 40. Am I correct? Because it's
Very
never
old.
too late.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Now, I'd like you to talk to them, to Victor and many other Filipino women who might still be having that dream. What do you want to tell them?
Sometimes it might sound arrogant, because I eat 3 meals a day. I have some kind of a job. I really don't know because I know that they continue to have difficulty. Although Victor, I hope, I haven't seen him in years. I hope that still has a job. He has started a family, and Victor was able to move up from his being a street child. You do know his story, right? He ran away from home. He started out as a street child. We found him a job with MMDA. And then the last time I saw him, he already had a kid. And he still had the job at MMDA. There are so many Victors and other people like him. And I feel sad when I remember that because I don't think Victor owns a house. And I don't think, well, if he has a job, he's probably renting a room somewhere. So I can't say that was a success story yet. But as long as there's life, as long as you are trying, there is hope, right? In any person's life. So I think one of our objectives as persons, as Filipinos, is to help others in whatever way we can. And there are many ways. And there are many Filipinos who are doing that. There are people who start kitchens to feed others. There are people who have all of these, what do they call them? We did stories on them when they sell goods. You can pick out food. And there are many, many things like that. And they're so admirable. I admire these Filipinos. And they are role models for us. You can be role models. All of us can be role models. We just have to choose what we want to do and do it. Not just think of it. I think that's one of our major faults. Now we think about it, yes, I want to do this. And then sometime along the way, we forget and we don't do it. So I think we must do the Nike way, just do it.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yeah.
Science and virtue is are very evident in everything that you mentioned this afternoon. My heart is so full right now because of the wisdom that you have shared with us.
Grit, critical thinking, and values formation. These are only some of the lessons that we have learned from the OG media rockstar in the Philippines, Ms. Cheche Lazaro. Thank you very much for joining us today for another episode of Cup of Jose, your local Escolarian podcast, where discussions have a purpose. Bye for now.
Does anybody here remember the EDSA Revolution? How many of you were at the EDSA Revolution?
Nah,
Why are you laughing? You weren't there?
they aren't born yet.
You weren't born yet. Oh, goodness gracious. That even makes it worse.